fully committed to provide an ethical treatment for our candidates, because we think that the candidate who is a candidate today will be a decision maker something like 5 years later, and we would be happy to have him to use the portfolio as well.
Yeah, I just try to underline that behind every assessment instrument SHL has, there is extensive professional and scientific work. There is always a handbook coming together with the tests and instruments, and there are a lot of statistical studies which would prove the reliability and validity of all the instruments. Adult people are very prone to lie, not to say the truth, especially if something depends on what they will answer to the question. So the people who come to the selection process will not answer honestly about their working behavior, their typical working behavior, but will begin to think about what do they think I should say in order to get this job. So what could be done about it? Those who were developing this instrument could not find any other solution but something that is called forced choice questionnaires. Forced choice questionnaires, in a forced choice questionnaire, there are usually 3 or 4 questions or statements grouped together, and you have to choose the one which fits most to you and the one which fits least to you out of these 4 questions. People don't like that. Why not? Because they would like to say all 4 fits me or none of them fits me, but that's not what we ask for. What we ask for is out of these 4, which one fits you best and which one fits you least. So that's actually, this is the only solution psychologists came forth in the last 30, 40 years, how to assess quickly a person's personality about job-relevant behavior. By competency, we mean a behavior repertoire that enables us to give effective answers to the requirements of the organization. Competency is just something which is needed to give excellent performance at the organization. And it could be ability, it could be knowledge, it could be ability, it could be personality, it could be a value system, it could be anything which is needed to do an excellent job at the organization. So psychologists and non-psychologists are doing selection the same way as they did before, but now they are not talking about we are assessing abilities or we are assessing personality, we are assessing competencies. Now certainly, in order to be able to assess competency, we are not only have to know very well the person, but we also have to know very well the job, just as you underlined before. So competency puts together job analysis and to get to know the people.
Yeah, it's obvious that decision maker likes this definition because they can discriminate the high performance from the average performers, so they really welcome this approach. On the other hand, the candidates like this one as well because they can look at their own professional personalities that, well, okay, I do not have such a good education or such a good knowledge, but I have a higher motivation than the other candidate, which means that I can be still as good as the other one. So both sides, the organization and the people who are looking for jobs, likes to be this kind of approach that you are going to measure based on competencies.
Well, many of you have heard already the basic equation of HR is that performance is equal ability by multiplied by motivation. And of course, like every equation about human beings is rubbish, but it has something important in it. It does suggest that even if you have very good abilities, if your motivation is zero, then the performance is going to be zero. On the other hand, even if you are very motivated, if your ability is zero, then the performance is going to be zero. So for a good performance, for a good achievement, you need ability and motivation. And here ability means actually ability and personality and so on.
Our favorite clients who have the time and the money to develop a competency model, they do this because they think this is the common language between all the HR functions. And that's a very nice system if you can design your selection process based on competencies and you already have the competency model what the trainers or the developers or the mentors or the coaches can use in the organization. And it is a very good system if you can plan the careers next along the competencies as well. So that's why they would like to have a competency model, because in this way they can overlap the whole cycle of the professional life in the organization.
Yeah. So nowadays, most of the big multinational companies have a competency model. But some of them still do not have, and one of our job is to help the companies to develop a competency model. And of course there are generic competency models, like SHL has a generic competency model for managers, and another generic competency model, for instance, for salespeople. And we work together with the companies when developing the competency model. Juliana likes it very much. These are so-called competency cards, and there are competencies written on it, and then people can select out of these competencies which are important for which jobs.
We can offer you services. We have already mentioned a few, like designing a competency model, like training HR people, and this kind of services can be a standard international service, what we can offer to you based on our SHL experience, or we can design a tailor-made service if you have a special task, what you think it would be better to solve in a unique way instead of using a standardized methodology. And that's same with our portfolio, with our products.
For most of the management selection, people use all over the world basically only two kinds of ability tests: verbal tests and numerical tests. They are standard instruments in the sense that they look the same all over the world, and they are carefully adapted to mean the same, to have the same difficulty level, to have the look and feel the same. Actually, when we entered into the Hungarian market 20 years ago, we could enter into the market that our tests were nicely printed. because all the tests the psychologists were using were badly Xerox copied, because they would not pay for it. So HR people were ready to buy because they looked much more professional, because they were nicely printed, colorful, and so on. But it didn't last too long. I mean, you cannot win the whole market just by nicely printing things. It has to be professional, reliable, and valid too. But they were standardized. The standard, the time, the instruction, everything should be the same. Now, in recent years, there are more and more need to have tailor-made instrument. If a company has a very strong culture, organizational culture, then they would need an assessment instrument which are looking exactly the same as the image they would like to present to the outside world, which has texts which are immediately seen relevant to the company, and so on. So SHL is ready to do this kind of tailor-made instruments, but of course the company should be big enough to be ready to pay for it. So tailor-made instruments has the advantage that it fits better to the company. Standard instruments has the advantage that it's tried out on much more people, on much more culture, and so on. So companies carefully have to evaluate what are they really need, a tailor-made one or a standard one, but SHL is ready to provide both. Multinational companies don't want to see the applicants anymore, just the best ones. So this was the internet age. They wanted us to have an internet-based testing system, a system where we can send the test to the client would fill out the questionnaire, solve the problems, the result comes to the HR person, and the HR person only asks the very best one, usually the best 6, to come to the office and then have some other examination. So now this is what makes most of our business internet-based testing. Of course, there is a problem which will be solved pretty soon, but it is a problem right now that you cannot know that the actual person is doing this questionnaire or ability tests. So what we say is that we might not believe entirely in the good results, but we do believe in the bad results. Because the person who did very badly on the ability tests even had no friend or relatives who could fill out this test. So we are using this internet-based testing at least half the applicants. So the worst half is sent away. Then the people would get the personality questionnaire online again. Now, usually applicants are inclined to fill out the online personality questionnaire themselves, not giving to their friend, because they are not sure whether the friend would be better or worse. So we believe more in the results in the personality questionnaires. But even in this field, nowadays, we usually ask the person, the best people, the most promising applicants to come into the office and have a personal meeting for a feedback session, for a feedback interview. And we usually say that until the feedback session, feedback interview is over, we treat the computer-generated results as intelligent hypotheses. And we only begin to believe in this hypothesis after we really faced the people. We had this interview with the people. But recently, more and more, even the feedback interview is putting back online. That is, you fill out the questionnaire, the computer generates the report about you, then you read your report, and you have a chance to rate every sentence. How much do you agree with these sentences? And they come to the footnote. You can make remarks about your report. And the HR person would not only get a report on you, but would also get a report, what do you think about the report we have about you? And again, only the most promising people will be asked to come into the office. During the assessment centers, we are using ability tests and personality questionnaires, but always using simulation exercises. The heart of an assessment center is the simulation exercise. Group exercises and individual exercises we are using. In assessment centers are getting more and more popular in Hungary and in most Eastern European countries. Assessment center is an expensive and time-consuming way to assess people. So you better out-select the non-promising people and only have assessment centers for the promising one. And of course, in order to have a successful assessment center, you need to have very well-trained assessors. Because an assessment center is never as objective as an ability test or a personality questionnaire. It is less objective, but closer to reality. A development center is different from an assessment center, one that the main purpose of development center is development and not assessment. But a part of the process is assessment. There is no development center without assessment. If a development center has no assessment in it, then it is a training. So an assessment center a development center is a little bit like a training with a strong assessment part.
Input, yeah.
And a development center is always longer than an assessment center. And it's not only for the best. We are just having a project right now when we go home. This is for a large Hungarian-based chemical company where we will have assessment centers for 120 people. So the next month we are going to do assessment centers all the time because it's time-consuming. And at the end of the development center, there is a very detailed report which could be used for development purposes for the next year on. While at the end of the assessment center, we might have a more or less detailed description of the person, but the main point is who is the best out of the 6 who attended the assessment center.
This is a training program to provide some kind of professional knowledge for you how to deal with people in the business life. So we would like to teach you how to get closer to them without having prejudice or any kind of subjective thing which would somehow make a distortion on your consequences. The exam has 3 parts, and the exam is that you are going to fill out tests and questionnaires. So this is your experience. You need to experience how it feels to be a candidate. And the second part of the exam is an open book test when you need to answer a few questions like what is the difference between a development center and an assessment center. And the third part is the most interesting one because we would provide a live candidates for you and you are going to administer the tests with them, and you are going to feed the result back to them. And there will be a consultant who would watch your first administration and feedback to that alive person.